at the deepest place on Earth. The first impossible thing you might find is not a monster. It is something much harder to explain. A small, pale animal, moving calmly under a weight that would destroy almost everything we build. And inside that world, there may be biology that does not just survive the pressure. It may work better because of it. That is the part that feels wrong. 11,000 meters below Earth, life is not screaming against the ocean. It has become part of the crush. Tonight, we are going to the bottom of the Mariana Trench, not to imagine horror, not to look for giant creatures, but to understand something stranger, how life keeps going. When the planet removes nearly everything we think life needs. No sunlight, almost no warmth, almost no food, no open sky, no day, no night. Only black water, cold sediment, and pressure so complete, it feels less like an environment and more like a different version of physics. And yet, something still lives there. That is the hook of this entire world. The deepest place on Earth is not dead, it is occupied, quietly, slowly, by things that should make us rethink what the word alive even means. Before we go any deeper, hold this image. A camera reaches the trench floor. The lights turn on. At first, there is only pale mud, a flat, silent, impossible floor. Then a small shape moves. Not dramatically, not like a movie creature, just a tiny body crossing the sediment, as if this place is normal, as if 11,000 meters of ocean above it is simply weather. That is more disturbing than a monster. A monster would be easy. A monster would belong to imagination. But a small animal living calmly at the bottom of the world belongs to science. And science makes it harder to dismiss. The Mariana Trench is often sold as a number, 11,000 meters, 36,000 feet, nearly 7 miles, deeper than Everest is tall. Those numbers are huge, but they can also flatten the mystery. They make the trench sound like a measurement, a record, a line in a textbook. But the real story begins when the number becomes a condition, because depth is not just distance. Depth is force. Every 10 meters of seawater adds more pressure. Every 100 meters adds another invisible layer of weight. Every 1,000 meters makes the ocean above feel less like water and more like a mountain made of liquid. At the deepest known part of the ocean, the pressure is around 1,000 times the pressure at sea level. A normal human body does not belong in that sentence. A normal machine does not belong there either. Most things we use on the surface, windows, containers, pipes, air spaces, electronics, have to be completely rethought before they can even visit. A deep-sea vehicle does not go down like a boat. It goes down like a sealed argument against collapse. Rounded, thick, careful. Built around the fact that the ocean is trying to press every weakness closed. But here is the second impossible thing. The animals down there are not made of steel. They are soft, small, flexible, alive. They do not survive by being stronger than the pressure. They survive by never needing to resist it the way we do. That is a different kind of intelligence. Not thought, design, evolution. A body shaped by a place that gives no forgiveness. And in that place, even chemistry has to behave differently. Proteins must keep their shape. Cell membranes must keep working. Nerves and muscles must still pass signals. Digestion must still happen. Life cannot simply be present there. It has to function there. This is the first milestone. At the bottom of the Mariana Trench, survival is not about toughness. It is about compatibility. The creature does not beat the trench, it belongs to it. That idea changes everything. Because when humans imagine the deep ocean, we often imagine life fighting the environment, clinging on, barely surviving, almost dead. But that may be the wrong picture. For the organisms that evolved there, the trench is not an extreme place they are trapped inside. It is the place their bodies expect. The pressure is not a surprise. The darkness is not a problem. The cold is not a tragedy. The scarcity is not temporary. It is the world, and life has had time to learn its grammar. Now comes the detail that really bends the mind. Some hadal amphipods, small crustaceans found in deep trenches, are not just scavengers waiting for meat. Researchers have reported enzymes in Mariana Trench amphipods that can digest wood. Wood, a material from trees, from land, from a sunlit world. And one reported enzyme worked better under high pressure than under low pressure. Think about that slowly. A tiny animal in the deepest ocean may carry chemistry that can process pieces of the land, and that chemistry may prefer the pressure of the deep. Suddenly, the trench is not just a dark pit. It is a recycling chamber at the bottom of Earth, a place where fragments from distant forests, from coastlines, from storms, from ships, from the living surface, can eventually become food in a world with no sunlight. This is the second milestone. The Mariana Trench is not cut off from Earth. It is Earth's lowest receiver. Things fall into it. Sediment, organic particles, tiny bodies, chemical traces, sometimes larger remains, sometimes material that began far away from the sea. The bottom does not create sunlight. It receives consequences. The surface world lives, dies, breaks apart, and slowly sends pieces of itself down. That falling material is sometimes called marine snow. But the phrase sounds too gentle. It makes the process feel pretty. And sometimes it is. Tiny white particles drifting through black water, falling for days, weeks, sometimes longer. But what that snow really means is this. The deep sea is fed by the ruins of the bright world. Every particle is a little death, turned into a chance, a plankton cell, a fragment of shell, a scale, a piece of waste, a dead organism broken smaller and smaller. Most of it is eaten before it reaches the deepest places, but some of it continues downward, past the last sunlight, past the familiar animals, past the zones where cameras already struggle, down into the hadal world, the world of trenches, the underworld of the ocean. The name hadal comes from Hades, and for once, the name almost fits. Not because it is evil, not because it is full of fire, but because it is beneath the ordinary world, hidden below the place our senses were built to understand. The hadal zone begins around 6,000 meters down. That is already deeper than most of the ocean floor, but the Mariana Trench keeps going. The trench is not a simple hole. It is a long geological wound, where one tectonic plate bends beneath another. The planet folds downward there, not quickly, not visibly to us, but with enough time, stone becomes slope, seafloor becomes canyon. A boundary between plates becomes the deepest known place on Earth. This is the third milestone. The Mariana Trench is not just deep water, it is moving geology, a place where Earth itself is still being rearranged. And inside that rearranged darkness, life has found footholds. Not a jungle, not a reef, not a paradise. That would be the wrong image. The trench floor is severe, quiet, sparse, a place of mud, slopes, pressure, and waiting. But sparse does not mean dead. That is the mistake humans keep making. We look for abundance and miss persistence. We look for color and miss chemistry. We look for large animals and miss the small ones that actually explain the system. At the deepest ocean floor, the most important life may be the easiest to overlook. Microbes in sediment, tiny scavengers, soft-bodied animals, small crustaceans, organisms that do not look impressive until you realize where they are. A single amphipod at that depth is not just an animal. It is evidence. Evidence that food reached the bottom. Evidence that bodies can function under crushing pressure. Evidence that the limits of life are not where our instincts put them. And that brings us to the fourth milestone. The deepest life on Earth is not spectacular because it is large. It is spectacular because it makes the impossible look routine. That is what I want this video to feel like. Not shock from size, shock from calmness. The little body moves, the sediment shifts. A scavenger finds a trace of food. A microbe breaks down what fell. And the deepest floor on Earth continues its slow work, without light, without drama, without needing us to see it. Now imagine turning off the camera lights. There is no blacker black than this kind of black. On the surface, night is temporary. Even the darkest night is connected to morning. Stars remain. The moon may rise. A city may glow beyond the horizon. But below the reach of sunlight, darkness is not an event. It is the permanent condition. There is no dawn coming. There is no blue hour. There is no weather of light. If every artificial lamp went out at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, your eyes would have nothing to do. Not shadows, not outlines, nothing. And still, this darkness is not silence. That is another strange fact. Scientists have recorded sound from the deepest part of the ocean, and instead of finding pure silence, they found that even 7 miles down, the ocean can be noisy. Earthquakes, distant wails, storms above, human sounds. The planet still reaches down. This is the 5th milestone. The deepest place on Earth is dark, but not disconnected. It receives falling food. It receives sediment. It receives sound. It receives vibration. It receives chemistry. And now, it receives traces of us. That last part should be said carefully, because this is a sleep documentary, not a panic story. But the truth is part of the wonder. The Mariana Trench is not outside the planet's systems. It is inside them. So deeply inside them that we forget it is connected. But the ocean does not forget. The surface always has a pathway down. That means the trench is not the end of Earth. It is one of Earth's collecting places, a final basin, a hidden archive, a place where the bright world leaves fingerprints in the dark. And the life down there reads those fingerprints as food, as habitat, as chemical opportunity. Now we can return to the creature. The small, pale animal under the light. Imagine it again. Not as a random dot on the seafloor. Imagine it as the result of millions of tiny negotiations. With pressure, with hunger, with cold, with darkness, with distance, with time. Its body is not asking why the sun is gone. It never needed the sun directly. It is not waiting for rescue from the surface. The surface is not home. The trench is home. That word still feels almost impossible. Home. 11,000 meters down. Home. Under pressure that can collapse metal. Home. Where food arrives as scraps from a world above. Home. Where no sunrise has ever touched the ground. And this is the 6th milestone. A place can be deadly to us, and still be normal to something else. That may be the deepest lesson of the trench. Not that life is everywhere, not that life is magical, but that life is specific. It becomes local, it becomes tuned, it becomes shaped by the rules of a place, until what would kill one creature becomes the ordinary background of another. The Mariana Trench is not amazing because it breaks nature. It is amazing because nature continues there, under rules we barely understand. And the more closely we look, the less the trench feels like empty darkness. It begins to feel like a slow machine, not mechanical, living. A system where particles fall, microbes work, scavengers search, sediment stores, pressure shapes, and time stretches. The deepest floor of Earth is not a stage for monsters. It is a patient economy. Nothing wasted, nothing fast, nothing easy. Everything paid for by what falls from above. This is why the title matters. Something still lives 11,000 meters below Earth. But the word something is not there because we are hiding a monster. It is there because the truth is wider than one creature. Something moves, something feeds, something digests, something waits. Something changes chemistry into survival. Something turns the remains of the surface into life at the bottom. That is more powerful than a single animal. It means the trench is not an object. It is an ecosystem, a severe one, a dark one, a nearly unreachable one, but an ecosystem. And if that does not feel strange yet, try this final thought. The deepest place on Earth, a place no human can enter unprotected, a place sunlight never reaches, a place where machines must be engineered against collapse, is not beyond life. It is part of life's range. We are the ones outside the range. To the trench animals, we are the impossible creatures, soft, air-breathing bodies, from a thin, bright layer, unable to exist for a moment in the world they call home. That is the reversal. We look down and think, how can anything live there? But from the trench's point of view, the stranger question may be, how can anything live up here, in all this light, noise, speed, and air? In the next part, we will go closer to the trench floor. We will look at what has actually been seen there, why small animals may be more shocking than giant monsters, how food reaches the deepest mud, and why pressure can become less of an enemy and more like the rule life learned to speak. For now, stay with one image. A light switches on at the deepest known point of the ocean. The camera looks across the sediment. Nothing should be there. Nothing should move. But then, a pale shape crosses the dark, slowly, calmly, as if the bottom of Earth was never empty at all. If you expect the deepest place on Earth to be ruled by fish, there is a problem. The ocean may become too deep for fish, not too dark, not too cold, too deep. At some point, pressure stops being just a challenge. It becomes a biological wall. The water keeps going down, the trench keeps falling away, but familiar bodies begin to run out of options. So at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, the most shocking thing may not be a giant predator. It may not be a glowing monster. It may not be a huge blind fish waiting in the mud. It may be something much smaller, a pale scavenger moving across the sediment with a body chemistry that belongs to a world we could not survive for a second. That is where the story becomes darker than fiction. Because fiction gives us monsters, the trench gives us limits, and then it shows us what crosses them. In part 1, we learned that the deepest place on Earth is not empty. Now we need to ask the colder question. What kind of body can still work when the planet removes almost everything? No sunlight, no warmth, no easy food, no familiar pressure, no day, no night. Just black water, cold sediment, and a weight so complete that most surface life would simply fail. This is why the real story of the trench does not begin with giants. It begins with small bodies, soft bodies, scavengers, microbes, chemical tricks, creatures that do not look powerful until you understand the place they are surviving in. Imagine a lander touching down on the trench floor. Its lights open a small artificial day in a world that has never had one. At first, the camera sees only sediment, pale, soft, quiet, a floor made from the slow collapse of the world above. Every grain looks ordinary, until you remember where it is. Then, something moves. A small amphipod enters the light. It does not look like the ruler of an impossible world. It looks almost too simple. A pale, shrimp-like scavenger crossing the mud. But at 11,000 meters, ordinary movement is no longer ordinary. To move there, a body has to keep its chemistry stable, under crushing pressure. To feed there, it has to detect rare food. In a world where opportunity may arrive slowly and disappear quickly, to reproduce there, it needs an entire life cycle built for permanent darkness. The amphipod is not frightening. It is worse than frightening. It is adapted. A monster would make the trench feel imaginary. A small animal, calmly feeding at the bottom of Earth, makes it feel real. When scientists send baited landers into deep trenches, something strange happens. The bait falls into darkness. A chemical message enters the water, and after a while, life begins to arrive. No roar, no attack, no cinematic movement, just bodies appearing from blackness, one by one. That detail matters. The bait is not just food, it is a signal dropped into a hunger world. Somewhere beyond the lights, something notices. Not with thought, not with eyes like ours, with chemistry, with pressure-shaped senses, with a body tuned to faint traces, moving through dark water. This is the first hard turn of the trench floor. It is not passive. It waits, it senses, it responds. Slowly, quietly, but it responds. And now comes one of the facts that should make the whole video stop for a second. Some trench amphipods have been studied because of what they can digest. Not just soft animal tissue, not just dead fish, not just plankton. Wood, a material from trees, from land, from rainfall, from rivers, from sunlight. Wood, at the bottom of the deepest ocean. At first, that sounds absurd. Why would an animal living in the Mariana Trench need chemistry that can handle material from forests? But the ocean is not as separate as it looks. Rivers carry plant material. Storms tear matter from land. Trees fall, branches drift, ships lose pieces. Hard fragments can sink, and some of them can travel farther than we expect. The trench is not another planet. It is the lowest room of this one. Things from upstairs can eventually find the basement. That changes the Mariana Trench. It is not just a dark pit. It is a receiving chamber. Marine snow falls from the surface. Sediment collects. Organic remains drift down. Chemical traces arrive. And sometimes, material that began far from the sea becomes part of the deep food story. So the animals down there are not living in total separation. They are living at the end of a very long delivery system. The surface world produces, breaks, dies, washes away, and sinks. The trench receives a plankton bloom, a dead fish, a piece of wood, a carcass, a fragment of waste. Most of it vanishes long before the deepest trench, but not all of it. Some material keeps going, and in a world with almost no food production of its own, even a small arrival can matter. This is where the deep sea stops feeling empty and starts feeling economical. Nothing is casual. Nothing is decorative. Food is not background. Food is an event. Near the surface, a meal can be routine. At the bottom, a meal can change the neighborhood. A carcass can draw scavengers. A larger fall can sustain communities. A tiny fragment can become the difference between waiting and feeding. The trench does not feel quiet because life there is gentle. It feels quiet because everything is careful. Energy is expensive. Movement has a cost. Searching has a cost. Being wrong has a cost. In a place where food may arrive as rare signals from miles above, Impatience is a bad strategy. That is why the animals can look calm without being simple. Their world rewards patience, sensitivity, efficiency, and chemistry that does not fall apart. And chemistry may be the real monster of this story. Some deep trench animals have adaptations that sound almost invented. Certain hadal amphipods have been linked to a strange protective chemistry involving aluminum. Not armor like a crab shell, not metal plates. Something stranger, a gel-like layer formed in the deep sea environment, a chemical shield on a small, pale animal living in the deepest darkness on Earth. That is not scary in the cheap sense. It is unsettling because it is precise. Life is not just enduring the trench, it is reading the trench, using the trench, becoming local to the trench. This is why the Mariana story is bigger than depth. The trench is not simply a place where animals are tough. Toughness is too simple. A rock is tough. A steel sphere is tough. Life down there is not merely tough. It is tuned. Pressure affects proteins. It affects membranes. It affects how molecules fold, how they interact, how they keep working. If the chemistry of a body fails, there is no dramatic ending. The animal simply cannot function. That is why fish become so interesting here. Fish have entered the hadal world. Snailfish have been recorded at extraordinary depths. They look almost delicate, pale, soft, ghost-like. Nothing like the armored creatures you might expect. Their bodies are not built like submarines. They do not fight pressure with metal. They exist with it. But even fish may have a limit. One reason involves a molecule called TMAO. It helps stabilize proteins under pressure. The deeper some fish live, the more they may depend on stabilizing chemistry like this. But there appears to be a point where the requirement becomes too much. The ocean continues downward. The trench keeps going. But the fish body plan may not be able to follow forever. That idea is quietly brutal. The deepest ocean is not just darker water. It is a filter. It filters bodies. It filters chemistry. It filters what kinds of life can cross each line. So when we say, something still lives 11,000 meters below Earth, the word something matters. It is not promising a giant fish. It is not promising a monster. It is pointing to a stranger truth. The deepest place is not ruled by the animals we expect. It is occupied by the ones that can still function. Amphipods, microbes, sea cucumbers, worms, soft-bodied animals. Small organisms suited to a world where familiar categories begin to fail. The lower you go, the more the cast changes. The dramatic animals fade. The smaller systems matter more. The trench becomes less like a dark aquarium and more like a severe economy of scraps, sediment, chemistry, and waiting. Microbes may be some of the most important life there. Even when the camera cannot make them feel impressive, they process organic matter. They take part in chemical cycles. They help turn falling material into something usable. They do not need to be visible to shape the system. Humans love scale. We want the biggest animal, the oldest animal, the most terrifying mouth, the largest shadow. But the trench punishes that instinct. At the bottom of Earth, importance does not always look large. A microbe can matter more than a monster. A scavenger can explain more than a giant. A particle falling from the surface can begin a chain that ends in the deepest mud on the planet. That is what makes the trench feel alive, in a different way. Not alive like a reef, not alive like a forest, alive like a hidden metabolism, a slow system that eats what falls. Now think about the sediment itself. It is not just a floor, it is a record. layers settle, organic matter gets buried, chemical traces remain. The trench floor collects the history of what happened above it, not as stories, as particles. The surface blooms, the trench receives. The surface dies, the trench receives. The surface pollutes, the trench receives. That last truth is uncomfortable, but it matters. The deepest places are not beyond us, they are below us, and below is still connected. This is why the Mariana Trench should not be imagined as untouched just because it is unreachable. Unreachable to our bodies does not mean disconnected from our consequences. The ocean has pathways we barely think about. What happens in the lit world can leave traces in the dark one. The trench is the bottom of the map, but it is not the end of the system. And then there is sound. The deepest ocean feels silent in the imagination, a black, still chamber under miles of water. But deep trench recordings have shown that the deepest ocean is not silent at all. Earthquakes can be heard. Distant wails can be heard. Storms far above can leave acoustic fingerprints below. Human noise can travel into places humans almost never visit. So the trench is lightless, but it is not informationless. That distinction changes everything. No sunlight does not mean no signals. It means life must read different signals. Pressure, vibration, chemistry, touch, scent, water movement, sediment disturbance. The world is still speaking, just not in the language our eyes prefer. In fact, our eyes are part of the problem. Every time we see the trench, we have already changed it. A lander brings lights into a world without light. It brings metal into a pressure world. It may bring bait into a hunger world. The camera does not reveal the trench like an invisible observer. It creates a temporary event. A sudden little sun appears on the deepest floor on Earth, and life responds. That does not make the science weak. It makes it humbling. At 11,000 meters, even looking is not neutral. To see the deepest place, we have to disturb the darkness. That is why even a simple clip from the trench floor feels powerful. It does not show the whole truth. It shows access. A few seconds of access to a world almost completely unavailable to human senses. A pale body moves, sediment lifts. A scavenger approaches food. Another shape enters the edge of the light. The image looks small, but the conditions behind it are enormous. The camera is not just filming an animal. It is filming a boundary being crossed. This is the emotional center of part 2. We keep wanting the Mariana Trench to shock us with size, but it keeps shocking us with function. The animal is small, but it works there. The food is rare, but the system uses it. The darkness is total, but life reads other signals. The pressure is crushing to us, but not meaningless to everything. The trench does not need to become dramatic to become unbelievable. It is already unbelievable because it makes survival look calm. And that calmness is the disturbing part. A fish may hit a biological limit before the deepest floor. A machine may need a pressure sphere just to visit. A human body would be destroyed instantly without protection. But a small amphipod moves through the sediment as if the bottom of Earth is simply a place. Not a myth, not a warning, a place. Home is the strangest word we can use here, but it may be the right one. Not home for us. Home for organisms, shaped by rules we cannot live under. Imagine that reversal. To trench life, we are the impossible creatures. Fragile air breathers, from a thin, bright layer, dependent on light, warmth, and gentle pressure. We look down and ask, how can anything live there? But from the trench's point of view, the stranger world may be ours. All this light, all this noise, all this speed, all this air. The Mariana Trench stretches the idea of life because it reminds us that our version of normal is not universal. It is local. We live in one small band of possibility and call the rest extreme. But the planet is not built around our comfort. Most of the ocean is dark. Much of it is cold. Pressure dominates enormous spaces. Life has had time to explore conditions that feel impossible only because we did not evolve for them. That is why the deepest place on Earth is not simply a record. It is an argument that darkness is not the same as death, that pressure is not the same as impossibility, that a world without sunlight can still have hunger, movement, chemistry, and response, that the bottom of Earth is still part of the living Earth. In the next part, we will go deeper into the body itself, how pressure changes survival, why soft animals can succeed where hard machines struggle, how food falling from above shapes the whole system, and why the smallest creatures in the trench may be more shocking than any monster. For now, keep one scene in your mind. A piece of food drops through miles of black water. It passes the last sunlight. It passes the last familiar shapes. It enters the trench. For a while, nothing happens. The mud is still. The water is black. Then, a pale body appears at the edge of the light. Then another. No roar, no chase, no giant shadow, just the quiet beginning of a feast at the deepest floor on Earth, at the bottom of the Mariana Trench. The ocean does not crush everything. It crushes the wrong things. That is the part most people miss. A steel can implode. A human lung would fail instantly. A normal machine needs a pressure sphere just to visit. But a small, soft animal, with almost no empty spaces inside it, can move across the mud, as if 11,000 meters of water is simply the weather of its world. That is the final reversal of this story. The deepest place on Earth does not reward strength the way we imagine strength. It rewards belonging. A hard shell can break. An air pocket can collapse. A rigid shape can become a weakness. But softness, flexibility, water-filled tissue, slow chemistry, and a body built without surface assumptions can survive where our strongest inventions struggle. So the Mariana Trench is not just asking, how deep can life go? It is asking something stranger. What kind of body is allowed to exist when the planet stops being gentle? In part 1, we learned that the deepest place on Earth is not empty. In part 2, we saw that the life down there is not the life we expect. Now, we need to understand the final rule. At 11,000 meters, survival is not about fighting the ocean. It is about becoming compatible with it. Think about what pressure actually attacks. It attacks empty space. It attacks trapped air. It attacks weak boundaries. It attacks anything that depends on holding one pressure inside, while another pressure pushes from outside. That is why a human body does not belong there. Our lungs are air spaces. Our sinuses are air spaces. Our ears rely on pressure differences. Our body is designed for a thin, bright layer near the surface, not for the deepest floor of the Pacific. But many deep-sea animals are not built around air. Their bodies are mostly water, and water does not compress the way air does. This is the first major truth of the final part. The trench does not simply crush life. It crushes surface design. A deep animal does not need to be made of metal. It needs to avoid the kinds of weakness that pressure can find. No lungs full of air, no fragile chambers, no surface-style body plan pretending it can survive below the world. This is why some of the creatures down there look soft, almost delicate. To us, softness looks vulnerable, but in the trench, Softness can be a solution. A soft body can equalize. A flexible structure can bend. A body filled with fluid can belong to the pressure instead of fighting it. That is a strange idea, because humans usually trust hardness, armor, steel, shells, walls, thick glass, pressure doors. But at the bottom of the ocean, hardness can become dangerous. If it creates a boundary the water can break. The trench teaches a different kind of engineering. Not stronger, better matched. Not louder, more precise. Not resistant, adapted. Now move from the body into the cell. Because pressure does not only threaten shape, it threatens chemistry. Proteins have to fold correctly. Membranes have to stay useful. Enzymes have to keep working. Nerves have to send signals. Muscles have to move. Digestion has to happen. If those processes fail, the animal does not die in a dramatic way. It simply stops being able to run itself. This is where the deepest ocean becomes almost impossible to imagine. A small animal moving through the mud is not just moving its body. It is keeping thousands of microscopic processes alive under conditions that would break our chemistry. Every movement is chemistry succeeding. Every feeding event is chemistry succeeding. Every tiny life cycle in the trench is a full system refusing to collapse. And that brings us back to fish, because fish make the limit feel real. Some fish can live incredibly deep. Some snailfish have been recorded in hadal trenches, far below the depths most animals could tolerate. They are pale, soft, almost ghost-like. They do not look built for violence. They look built for pressure. But even they may not reach the very deepest floor. One important reason may involve TMAO, a stabilizing molecule that helps proteins work under pressure. As depth increases, some fish need more of this kind of chemical help. But eventually, there may be a point where the chemistry cannot keep scaling. The water continues downward. The trench continues downward. But the fish body plan may run into a wall. Not a wall of rock, a wall of chemistry. That is one of the cleanest examples of why the Mariana Trench is not just deep. It selects. It filters. It decides which designs can continue. The deepest place is not asking, who is strongest? It is asking, whose chemistry still works? That is much colder and much more interesting, because once fish begin to fade from the deepest story, the animals that remain become more important. Amphipods, sea cucumbers, worms, microbes, small scavengers, soft bodies, life forms that do not carry the drama we expect, but carry the answer to a much bigger question. How little can life be given and still continue? At the trench floor, there is no sunlight to build the food chain from below. No green plants, no photosynthesis, no bright foundation. The energy mostly comes from elsewhere, from above, from death, from fragments, from marine snow, from carcasses, from organic matter falling slowly through miles of water. This means the deepest ecosystem is built on arrival. Something has to come down. A particle, a body, a trace, a chemical opportunity, a piece of the surface world, falling into a place that cannot make sunlight of its own. This is why the trench feels less like a landscape and more like a waiting system. Near the surface, life can chase, bloom, multiply, rush, explode into color. At the bottom, life waits for deliveries from a world it will never see. That sounds fragile, but it is also incredibly efficient. The trench does not waste much. If food reaches the bottom, something may detect it. If a carcass arrives, it can become a local event. If a small organic particle settles into sediment, microbes can begin their quiet work. Nothing has to be spectacular to matter. A tiny piece of falling life can become part of a chain, that ends inside the body of an animal, at the deepest floor on Earth. This is where the title becomes more powerful. Something still lives 11,000 meters below Earth, because Earth keeps sending pieces of itself downward. The trench is not cut off. It is connected vertically. The bright world above dies in fragments, and the dark world below learns to use them. Now imagine a single particle falling. It begins near the surface, where sunlight enters the water. It may be part of plankton, or waste, or a fragment of a dead body. It sinks through fish, through darkness, through pressure, through zones where animals eat what they can. Most of it disappears before it gets close to the bottom, but a little survives the journey. It keeps falling, past the last daylight, past the last familiar shapes, past the places where the ocean already feels impossible. And then, after a long, slow descent, it reaches the mud. To us, it would look like almost nothing. To the trench, it is income. That is the kind of world this is. A world where tiny arrivals matter. A world where patience is not peaceful, but necessary. A world where hunger is spread across darkness, and every opportunity is read carefully. This also changes how we should imagine the animals. They are not simply strange, they are economical. Their bodies cannot afford waste. Their movements cannot be careless. Their senses must be tuned to faint information. A chemical trace in the water, a disturbance in the sediment, a pressure change, a vibration, a signal too subtle for us to notice, but meaningful to a body that belongs there. Because the trench is lightless, but not empty of information. No sunlight does not mean no world. It means a different world. A world read through chemistry, touch, sound, pressure, smell, water movement, sediment. To humans, vision feels like truth. We want to see. We trust what the camera shows us. But in the Mariana Trench, the camera is almost an intruder. It brings light into a world that has never needed it. It brings metal into a pressure world. It may bring bait into a hunger world. It makes the invisible visible, but it also changes the scene. A little artificial sun appears on the seafloor, and the trench reacts. That thought should make every deep-sea image feel more precious. Not because it shows everything, because it shows anything at all. A few seconds of a pale animal moving, a few grains of sediment lifting, a scavenger approaching food, a soft body crossing the edge of the frame. These images look simple, until you understand that they are windows into a world, where looking itself requires an expedition. The trench is not hidden because it wants to be mysterious. It is hidden because our bodies are wrong for it. Our tools are barely invited. Our senses do not belong. Even our imagination keeps reaching for the wrong things. Giant monsters, ancient predators, glowing nightmares. But the trench keeps giving us smaller answers, and those answers are harder to shake. A microbe processing organic matter, a scavenger finding bait, a soft animal surviving pressure, a fish reaching a chemical limit, a trench floor collecting the slow fallout of the surface, a deep ecosystem built from fragments. The truth is not less strange than fiction. It is stranger because it works. Now we need to talk about pollution, carefully. Not to turn this into a panic story, but because it proves the same point again. The deepest places on Earth are not beyond the surface world. They are below it, and below still receives. Traces of human-made chemicals have been detected in deep ocean animals. Plastic and pollutants can reach places that feel almost unreachable. That fact is disturbing, but also revealing. It means the trench is part of the same planetary system. It is not a separate underworld. It is not protected by distance alone. The surface leaves fingerprints, even in the dark. So when we say the Mariana Trench is remote, we have to be precise. Remote from our bodies, remote from our daily lives, remote from sunlight, remote from ordinary machines, but not remote from Earth, not remote from falling matter, not remote from chemistry, not remote from sound, not remote from consequences. This is one of the final mental shifts of the video. The Mariana Trench is not the edge of the world. It is one of the places where the world collects. A bottom, a basin, a receiver, a record, a habitat, a place where life continues, not because conditions are generous, but because life has learned to use what is available. And what is available down there is almost nothing by our standards. Darkness, pressure, cold, sediment, rare food, faint signals, time. But somehow, for the organisms that belong there, that is enough. Not easy. Enough. That word matters. Enough. Life does not require comfort. It requires possibility. And at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, possibility is thin, but not gone. That is the final lesson. The deepest place on Earth is not a place where life becomes impossible. It is a place where life becomes specific, tuned, reduced, efficient, quiet, patient, stripped of almost everything unnecessary. If the surface is life in full volume, the trench is life turned down to its minimum signal, and still transmitting. That may be why the Mariana Trench feels so powerful. It does not overwhelm us with abundance. It unsettles us with continuation. We expect the story to end at the bottom, but the bottom is not an ending. It is a different chapter, written in pressure, darkness, and hunger. And now, return to the title one last time. Something still lives 11,000 meters below Earth. At the start, that sentence feels like a mystery. By the end, it feels like a correction. Because the real surprise is not that life reached the deepest place. The real surprise is that we assumed depth would stop it. We assumed darkness meant absence. We assumed pressure meant failure. We assumed the bottom meant silence. But life does not follow our assumptions. It follows chemistry, energy, opportunity, time. And if a world gives life even the narrowest path forward, life may not become beautiful in the way we expect. It may not become large. It may not become bright. It may not become dramatic. But it may continue. In the form of a pale scavenger, a microbe in sediment, a soft body in the dark, a chemical process, a slow feast, a small movement where nothing should move. That is more powerful than a monster. A monster would only prove that our fears were creative. But the small animals of the trench prove something larger. That Earth is not finished being strange. That life is not finished being flexible. That the places we call impossible may only be impossible to us. And that is the reversal this video was moving toward. We are not looking down at a dead world. We are looking down at a world where we cannot belong. To us, the Mariana Trench is extreme. To trench life, we are extreme. We are the fragile animals of the bright layer, dependent on air, sunlight, warmth, gentle pressure, fast food chains, constant visual information. We live in a thin, illuminated skin of the planet and call it normal. But the planet is mostly not that. Much of Earth is dark water, cold water, pressurized water, slow water. The deep ocean is not the exception. In some ways, we are. So maybe the deepest place on Earth does not show us how strange life can become. Maybe it shows us how narrow our idea of normal has been. A world without sunlight can still have hunger. A world under crushing pressure can still have movement. A world with almost no food can still build an economy. A world we cannot enter can still be home. That is why this story should stay in your mind. Not because the Mariana Trench is frightening, but because it is alive, in a way that does not need to resemble us. Now imagine the final scene. The lander rests on the sediment. The lights are fading. Beyond them, there is only black water. The food has been found. Small bodies have arrived. Particles drift through the beam. The mud holds its long memory. Above, 11,000 meters of ocean presses down. Above that, the surface moves in sunlight. Ships cross. Clouds pass. People sleep. Almost nobody is thinking about the floor of the world. But down there, in a dark so complete it has no morning, life continues. Slowly, precisely, without permission, without witness. The camera rises. The light pulls away. The small shapes disappear back into blackness. And for a moment, the deepest place on Earth looks empty again. But now you know better. It was never empty. It was only waiting, in a language we had not learned to read.